So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. We did a little survey here, and it was learned that folks really wanted help with mindset around how to stop procrastinating and how to be more patient when goals take a while to achieve. And I have to be honest, today I went and got my hair cut, and my husband went to get his hair cut at the same time, and we were driving, and I told him I was doing this live event today, and he started laughing, and he said, "You're doing you're doing something to talk about how not to procrastinate and how to be patient." And he thought that was hilarious because, okay, so maybe, yeah, maybe I do have some issues with, you know, procrastinating, and maybe I'm a wee bit impatient. Look, I mean, come on. This is the story of our lives. Like we are these people, and I'm not going to be here today telling you, "Oh, I have the answers." I have the answers. I'm the expert on how not to procrastinate and how to be more patient. Um, that is not the truth, and I'm not going to lie to you. Um, I wanted um, anyway, this whole idea of procrastination and patience, they both involve time. And I blame our troubles with procrastination and with patience on our culture, right? Our culture is we try to do too much, and we try to do too much too fast. And it's become a habit so that we can justify procrastinating things we really care about because we're busy and we're too busy to attend to the things that really matter to us. Um, and we're trying to do too much too fast. And so something has to go. And once we've made that decision and we've taken action and we're doing the thing, then we want to hurry up and get the result because we don't have time to wait. And we've set ourselves up, we run on dopamine, right? We run on that constant hit of, I want to feel good now. I want to feel good instantly. I'm going to distract myself from what I really need to do so I can feel good right now. And this whole conversation today is going to be about really determining that you want to be in alignment with what you really want the most, not just what you want right now. So we all want what we want right now. That's how we live in this country. That's how we've been conditioned to believe is possible. And the thing is, we do get a lot of things immediately. There's a lot of things within our control. We can grab our phones, we can put on Netflix, we can eat something that is available. How we use our time is often related to wanting to feel pleasure and avoid pain. And we're not consciously thinking of this, right? We're doing all the things. And I want to say first and foremost that I spent decades of my life like in a frenzied, frenetic, crazy state of mind, trying to do too much all the time. And I was a wreck. I got a lot done, and so maybe I looked successful, um, but it came at a huge cost. And so I want to make sure you know today that I'm not going to be telling you to work harder, to be more disciplined, to have more willpower, to be harder on yourself. This is going to be exactly actually the opposite. This is going to be about nourishing and about being self-compassionate and about really having deep and meaningful conversations with yourself. And so I wanted to say that, time doesn't change. Like time is still by our calendar and the way that we've devised it. We have seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years. Time is still passing no matter what we're doing. And so when we're thinking about time, we can't, we're either spending our time waiting to do something or waiting for something to happen. And this procrastination thing, one of the things with procrastination is we have some control over what we decide to put off and what we decide to take action on. And so when we procrastinate, like here's a true story, several true stories. I'm a radiologist and I still do radiology a few hours a day, and it's not my favorite. I've gotten really pretty like Don't tell anyone. Like it's just not, I've lost my curiosity about it. But it's a good job and it's a good way to make a living. And it's interesting. And I'm now working with some really great colleagues, which was not always the case. Um, and yet every day I used to read 60 MRs in a day. Now, if I have six, I'm like, oh, I've got to get through those today. And I will procrastinate and I will do something else that's mundane. I will pay bills. I would rather clean the toilet than do that thing. And I think it's really interesting because it's all relative what we decide to procrastinate about. And here's the thing, we never procrastinate about planning our vacation back when we could really make some big things, pre-COVID, and we're going to get back there. I just want you to know we are going to get to the end of this. Um, and things we look forward to, we have no trouble procrastinating, getting on, right? Planning, looking forward to things. But when there's something that we're not so excited about, or that we feel like there's a huge activation barrier to getting to, then that's when procrastination kicks in. And we fall on our saboteurs, our avoider, our the hyper rational. I don't need to do this. This is meaningless. This is silly. This is frivolous. Or we try to control too many variables and it's too overwhelming, and so we just quit. And I think the next, I have some little notes here. With patience, what's interesting is that the waiting is out of our control, right? We have to wait for something. We've made a decision, we've put in the investment, we're waiting for the phone call with our test results, or waiting for the changes we've made in our bodies or our diet or our lifestyle to kick in. And we expect it to happen on that timeline of everything in our culture. Things don't work that way. And both of these states give us a feeling of uncertainty and vulnerability and and there's a risk involved. If I believe in this, will it happen? Will it not happen? Should I put my hopes on this? Am I capable of this? Is this going to happen? Am I going to survive this discomfort? Again, that whole pleasure pain struggle, whether we're conscious of it or not, it's happening all the time. And so, both patience and procrastination have to do with discomfort and the fear of change, and we are resisting something or avoiding a feeling. And I wanted to read you, I'm always reading and I love quotes. And so I found a couple of powerful things today to read on this. This is The War of Art. It's a great book, super fast read, and it's all about resistance, like why we resist change. A couple really profound little entries here. Procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. Instead, we say, I'm going to write my symphony. I'm just going to start tomorrow. So we keep ourselves thinking like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. Or the most pernicious aspect of procrastination is that it can become a habit. We don't just put off our lives today, we put them off until our deathbed. Never forget, this very moment we can change our lives. There was never a moment and never will be when we are without the power to alter our destiny. This second, we can turn the tables on resistance. This second, we can sit down and do our work. And what this resistance, this thing that we come up against, is what procrastination is, a form of resistance, right? It's like, I want to change, but that word change just feels scary as hell. Even if it's change we really want, we connect discomfort with change. And I wanted to give you a funny example. This morning, I think about this all the time, like how often I really need to go to the bathroom and then I just don't. So, two case scenarios. When I'm really involved in work and I'm really focused, like reading those radiology cases I told you about, that it takes me so much motivation to just sit down and do it. But once I'm doing it and I want to get them done and feel that sense of, I'm so glad that's over, I will, for hours, I used to do this at work for hours. I would have to go to the bathroom for 3 or 4 hours and I just wouldn't go because I thought that, oh, I'll feel better when I get this work done, as opposed to I'll feel better when I go to the bathroom. And this happened to me, waking up at 4 a.m. now with menopause and all the things, and waking up, it's cold in the bedroom and I'm in like flannel sheets. And I have to go to the bathroom. And I can't believe how long I will sit there awake, uncomfortable, knowing that I would feel better if I would just get up and go to the bathroom. But there's this resistance. There's this resistance of, but I'm so cozy now. Like what's going to be harder, getting up and going to the bathroom? What's going to make me feel better, like staying here cozy or getting up and going to the bathroom? And we're in those silly little fights all the time. So I love what he says. This is this guy, Stephen Pressfield. Such a good book. It's about creativity, which again, we are creators because we're creating our lives, right? Not just art, it's not just music, it's not just literature. We're creating our lives, our own original versions. So he says, when I began this book, um, sorry, wrong one. So, what does resistance feel like? First, it's unhappiness. We feel like hell. A low grade misery pervades everything. We're bored. We're restless. We can't get no satisfaction. There's guilt, but we can't put our finger on the source. We want to go back to bed. We want to get up and party. We feel unloved and unlovable. We're disgusted. We hate our lives. We hate ourselves. Unalleviated resistance mounts to a pitch that becomes unendurable. At this point, vice kicks in. Dope, adultery, web surfing. Beyond that, resistance becomes clinical. Depression, aggression, dysfunction, then actual crime and physical self destruction. Sounds like life, I know, but it isn't. It's just resistance. And so, I'm really into words. I thought that was really, really cool. And so we have to overcome this activation barrier, right? We have to get into that conversation with ourselves of what do I want now versus what do I want the most? And be able to envision, I know Heather Hammerstedt talks about this a lot, be able to envision how we're going to feel after we get started. It's like we can't think about how we feel now. We have to think about how we'll feel once we do the thing that we don't want to do. Um, and once we get started, have you ever noticed, like, once you got that work project and you're delaying and you're postponing and you're cleaning bathrooms instead and you're doing mundane activities or looking on the internet to see if anything's changed in the weather forecast or the news. But once you get started, once you sit down, like I said, even with those radiology cases, once I sit down and I get going, then I pick up momentum and then we're good, right? So it's just that beginning part that we have so much resistance around, and that's what we have to overcome. And so I've talked a lot about procrastination. A couple little things is when you're doing this, like heard this great quote today about, it was from Wim Hof, who's the guy that, jumps in ice water, and he's super amazing, vagal stimulation and things like that, and getting used to being uncomfortable and how the body adapts. And so the quote is, the limit is not the sky, the limit is the mind. So good, right? So good. And we have to be careful who we hang out with. And that's not just in our social circles, but in our own heads, in our emotional environment. And it's contagious. So if you want to make a change in your life and you're hanging out with a bunch of people who are doing it the old way, it's not going to be that helpful for you. So you need to be aware of, is my current circumstance serving my goal? Are the people I'm hanging out with, if we're all sitting on the couch and I need to start exercising, it's not going to be good to hang out with the cozy people on the couch. I'm going to need to facilitate a better, get my odds increased to be able to increase my chance of success. And what you focus on becomes your reality. I heard this phenomenal talk. I was in a course all day yesterday, a CME course, continuing medical education, and we're talking about burnout. And what's so amazing is that what we focus on becomes our reality. So when you've got those voices in your head that are being negative or critical or telling you, don't start, it's just, oh, I don't feel like it, then that's what we focus on. And when you identify as a procrastinator, if you say, I'm such a procrastinator, then that's the identity that you're assuming. But if you say, I'm really working on trying to get more motivated, and even the word try, like Yoda says, there is no try, because even putting that word in our vocabulary, I'm trying to start doing this, implies that it may not work out, as opposed to saying things like, I'm doing this now. I'm working on this. I'm making progress on my goal. It's that little nuance in language that helps us believe that we're actually making an impact. We're in the process of this change, of getting up the activation barrier, the hurdle. It's not that tall. We're already like kind of gaining momentum, gaining energy around that. And this thing about what you focus on becomes your reality. It's crazy, but like they did these studies. This was medical research at Duke. They did these studies that it doesn't matter all the other things that you believe fundamentally, but if you're on Twitter all day and you're only seeing um, this becomes your reality. If you're focused on Twitter and what's happening there, that becomes your world. If you're focusing on how you wish your life were different, that's the focus of your world, as opposed to focusing on what do I want for my life? Where's the joy? How do I get more of that? What's the most fun, amazing thing I can do for myself today? Or if you're having a bad day, like, how can I nourish myself best today? Those internal conversations and dialogues that we have with ourselves are what make the huge impact and whether we're going to be able to overcome that procrastination. Um, and the other thing that's kind of funny is that procrastination is a little bit presumptuous, like that we have time, that we think we have more time, that we won't do it today, like the person wanting to create a symphony. I'm going to create a symphony. I'm just not going to do it today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. But this assumes we think that we have the time to do it later. And I'm not going to get all morbid and say, what if you die tomorrow? Will you feel like you have regrets? But it is a motivator. I'll say that. Procrastination in relationships, like I'm not going off on it here, but I cannot even believe all of the educated parents out there who will not talk to their kids about sex. That's like an entirely another topic that I'm going to get into at some point because outrageous to me. Um, Hard conversations that you want to have, that you need to have with your partner, talking to about leaving your job. Some of these things where you keep suffering because you just don't want to make that momentary rip off the band-aid, let's do this hard thing. So people will just endure the discomfort forever, assuming, yeah, I really need to do that. I'm going to get on that. It's important. I know it's important. I know. So they're making a choice. You're making a choice to delay if you're procrastinating. I just want you to know it's always in your mind, it's always up to you, and it's always an option. So I'm going to switch gears now to talking about patience. Because patience is a little bit of an opposite energy, right? It's still a vulnerable state because we have no control of when the phone's going to ring with the answer to the lab result, or when we're going to get the results that we set out to get when we started our lifestyle change, our exercise program, our decision that we were going to eat only plants. Um, we don't know when the results are going to come in, and we're used to the dopamine. We're used to that getting that hit right away. That's the cultural norm. And it's so hard to overcome because we're used to that. So we can't speed up time. We can't control other people's behavior. We can't control how quickly our body's metabolism changes. We can do the things we know are nourishing to our bodies because they're the right thing to do. Um, and I know it's anxiety provoking waiting. And so during that waiting period, and even during the procrastination period where we're trying to get motivated, both of those times really require deep self compassion, a deep relationship with yourself that says, like a cheerleader would, you got this. We got this. It's going to be okay no matter what the outcome is. If you're trying to motivate yourself, you say to yourself, I really want this. Long term, I really want this. And I want to start to feel like I'm on the upslope, like I'm making gains and I'm gaining momentum toward that change. And when you're feeling impatient, it's having that conversation that says, I can't control this. We can't control this. I talk to myself, I say, Tracy, it's going to be okay. We don't know what's happening. You're just going to do the next right thing. And that's all we can do. And we're going to wait. And if the outcome's not what we hope for, we're going to deal with that then. The other thing I love is this thing that my daughter gave me for Christmas, and it's from Marie Forleo, right? Everything is figure outable. We can't control everything, but we can figure things out. So I love that. Thought it was so cute that she gave it to me too. Like she'd noticed that I love that. Um, so we know we take action when the pain of staying the same becomes more painful than the pain of change or action. And so, it's this thing again of what you want now versus what you want the most. I'm going to, and I want to back up back to self-compassion. I want to just speak to that a little bit more, which is that, some people in our society think that self-compassion is weak, like, oh, you're all mushy and soft. There are two sides of self-compassion. It's kind of like yin and yang. The yin is the tender, nurturing, soft, maternal, loving, sitting in lotus, peaceful type of self-compassion, of tenderness. And then there's a yang type of self-compassion, which is really fierce loyalty to self, really fierce firefighter, like, we are doing this because this is important. Inside my head, self-compassion, I am not going to sit here and tolerate you feeling badly. I'm not doing that anymore. And so it's that fierce loyalty to self for responsibility. And so I have a couple other things to read to you, and I hope I'm not missing some people trying to talk to me. I see these little things like new tip. I don't know what that means, so I'm just going to ignore it. Um, but here are a couple other things. This book, oh my God, love it. The Wisdom of Anxiety, can't see, by Cheryl Paul. This book changed my life, my internal dialogue. Highly recommend it. And so she says here, this is again about resistance, but it's also about patience. Resistance, which is a cousin of fear, manifests as feeling too lazy, scared, or tired to engage in the practices or actions that you know will serve your higher self. It's the part that would rather binge on Netflix at the end of the day instead of write in your journal. It's the part that would rather sit on the couch than go for a run. The more you can name when resistance is running the show, the easier it will be to choose against it in service of your intention to heal and grow. There are other reasons why we resist growth. Growth means taking responsibility for ourselves in all ways. This is what adulthood is, people. Adulthood, as you know, is full of responsibility, but sometimes we think our responsibility is only to our job or our partners or our kids or society, the church group, helping others. And it's really, though, she goes on to say the child part of us that longs for someone else to rescue us from our pain becomes very loud when we consider taking on this task ourselves. I've worked with many clients who, as adults, are still operating from the belief, often unconsciously, that it's someone else's job to take care of them, especially their parents, and that if they assume that responsibility, then their parents never will. Of course, their parents never will anyway, but the resistant part of them doesn't want to acknowledge that. And so, I just think it's a lot to digest. But one of the things that I love doing here with the coaching and with all of Holist, because I know Holist ascribes to this belief, is that the reward is helping clients break through that wall of resistance that prevents them from taking full responsibility for their well-being. And that's what we're all about here, right? It's about well-being. It's about whole well-being in every aspect of our whole life experience. And we only get, one shot, like Eminem says. You only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow, because opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Yo. And then this whole thing about patience, the timeline of healing. Healing doesn't follow the timetable of the culture. It follows the timetable of the soul, which is circular, fluctuating, and mysterious. Because we live in a linear culture, we expect growth, and growth I'm referring to is anything you really want, that you're trying to get, that you're meeting resistance with, and that you're growing impatient with, right? It is a form of growth because it's requiring patience because it's something you haven't yet received. So you're growing in that aspect. We expect growth to occur linearly. We step onto the healing path and expect the curve to progress upwardly, just like everything else in life, or so the culture teaches. While this may be the path that the culture entrains us to expect, first grade follows kindergarten, second grade follows first grade, baby must follow house purchase, must follow marriage. It's not actually how real life goes. In fact, if you look closely, very few things in life progress linearly. We move toward our partner and then we retreat. We feel in touch with a higher presence, in love with our spiritual path, and then doubt sets in. We think we found our calling only to discover a few years into the job that we're ready to do something else. When you go through a so called relapse, as you inevitably will, remind yourself that you're ready for the next layer of learning. Remember that apathy is also emptiness, and emptiness is what precedes growth. The stillness of winter, which looks like apathy in its deadness, is readying the earth for the aliveness of spring. If you can avoid the pitfall of using the emptiness, apathy, numbness as evidence that something about your external life is wrong, and instead sit with the emptiness itself without assigning meaning to it, you will find your clarity once again. Clarity doesn't always mean happiness, but it does mean self responsibility. And that is where our wellness dwells. We have to have self responsibility. We have to be responsible for our own health. And when we are, that is where the transformation occurs.